I'll also say that I'm also super. How do you feel today, by the way? Are you still in good mood for the Congress?
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm feeling great, but my stomach tells me that I should go today. So it's very, very, very good to be here. So the topic today is to talk about how data can help your garden to be more sort of impactful, and we are now under the sort of headline of research. So we do research on human behavior and technology. So the story we're going to talk about today is how we can improve or help you to be more impactful and more efficient. Before we start, just a quick poll here. How many of you manage your collection on spreadsheets? Yes, exactly, and it is the most popular plant record system in the world. And it's so it's not nothing to be ashamed of. It's just the way it is. Today I'm just going to. Often when this discussion comes up about data, it starts off in the context of how we can help conserve species and global conservation initiatives. But I think, or we believe that often these kind of big problems need to be solved at grassroots. So we're going to focus more on the challenges and the impact we can do with improved technology at what is near to you. And our thought is that if we can solve those problems, these other challenges will become easier for us to solve together. So I'm going to walk through from the local to the more global, and we'll see how that goes. And one thing, this is a study from 2017 that looked at how the global community of botanic gardens contribute to plant conservation. And we're actually doing amazing. There's been many presentations on this topic that of all the kind of industries, plant garden community is doing extraordinarily well. Still, there's at this point in time, 30% of plant diversity is in conservation. This was 10 years ago. However, is it? And that's the big question, because we know by the data that is available that over 80% of botanic gardens in the world are actually managing their collections in spreadsheets and other basic workarounds. So a lot of the data is in the heads of individuals or in spreadsheets, tucked away, and that's just because of the effort of actually doing this is often very time consuming. And what we've seen also doing with our research is that why people don't adopt these more advanced systems is that they are often designed for, what should we say, institutions with much more technological tolerance. Sort of resourceful gardens like Arnold Alberton and others who have resources to actually spend time in filling out these forms, etc. So, but these systems are often for many far too complicated. And then it becomes out of reach. And they're also very expensive. So that's one of the bigger challenges that we started our project here 5 years ago. We looked at all the big things that people are struggling with. These are one of the two headliners. There are many others, but these are the biggest ones. So how can we solve those problems? Before we go into that, we're going to talk a bit about that at the end. But first we're going to see how this real-life data can help you. And the reason we built this slide deck here is also to maybe help you to articulate that, because I know many institutions might find it hard to bring this question up to management and say we need good data. Why? So hopefully this slide deck. There is a copy of the slide deck in Spanish. Normally I would make slide decks are less wordy, but hopefully by giving you this slide deck with more text, you can share that with colleagues when you get home. So let's first start with your daily work. What does it happen? So the scenario is, to think about it, an analogy would be your tool shed. You know, everybody loves a really messy tool shed. I don't think so. You go to the garden, where is the decision? Where is my chainsaw? Everything is very hard to find. So imagine if you tidy that up, suddenly days feel a bit easier. And I suppose that's also the way we look at at data, and also potentially data tools. They, cutting down a tree with a handsaw versus a chainsaw is a big difference. So getting the tools, the right tools for the job, is sometimes critical to be actually even bothered to do it, let alone doing it fast or efficient. So that's how we approach technology as well. Obviously, if you have a small garden, you probably know all the plants that it's you, not everybody else. That's number one. A lot of knowledge is in the heads of very smart people, and what we're trying to do with technology to allow that person to, with greater ease, capture this information so it can be shared. So that knowledge is not your knowledge, but it's the knowledge of your institution, and that changes dynamics. We've seen a lot of examples of how gardens start to understand, especially those who are not directly involved in the collections. They suddenly realize that, oh, I didn't know this, I didn't know that. So that's extremely helpful. Other things, of course, is to track. Spreadsheets, for example, are very great for a snapshot of what you have in the collection. But what's happening over time? There's a favorite word, hopefully the translators are happy with me now, we're using longitudinality. So the ability to track anything over time, it's used in medical science. So a patient, you have data on that patient over years, and that's how we also want to approach our collections, ideally. But that's quite difficult to achieve with just spreadsheets. So that's the kind of things we're trying to do with technology. And then, of course, the expertise you have. You have tremendous amount of expertise in your institution. How do you curate that for future, etc.? It's obviously very useful to do one-on-one and talk to people, but sometimes systems can do that. And by the end of the day, if you know what you have in your collection, you can make more informed decisions. And a lot of people with research background here, so I'm sure they acknowledge the fact that when you conclude on the research, having data to support your conclusion is quite helpful. Yeah. And then we go one step further. How does it impact your institution as a whole when you have data that you can rely on? Well, obviously, what we see a lot is that it becomes like a shared ownership because people can see what other people are doing. So I know people are very supportive of the institution of the garden or the vision of the garden, but when you see the data coming through, it changes. There's much more of the ownership of the data and what people are doing. I'm now competing with BPCI's accreditation story. We have a workshop on that, but this is the first step for many to get data. If you have reliable collection data that you can provide, that's one requirement for botanic garden accreditation. So that also goes down to the thing below here, which opens up for more opportunities to get funding. When you can basically tell a story about what you're doing with real facts. Reliable data opens up that conversation with much greater ease than you might have if you had unreliable data. And what we've also done with our work is to see that I'm yet to meet a botanic garden that does not have education as part of their overall mission. And being able to then share some of that work in the collections is crucial. So that's one thing that we realized very early that we need to offer, is to make also the effort of recording more interesting, because when you do something that the visitors will experience your investment, suddenly the return of investment changes. And the idea of knowing that what you have done is visible to others, suddenly it makes more of a sort of feedback loop, which is crucial for some effort. The last part is, general strategic planning is also very helpful when you can show not only what you've done, but what has changed since last time. Again, very hard to accomplish that with basic tools. So these are the kind of things we try to understand and see what we can do to help you to be more precise, if you like. And now we go to the level 3 here. So when you're then suddenly have your data, it opens up then more ability for you to participate beyond your own institution. These are just a few, there are probably a longer list here, but I just bring up a few on the table. And these are the things that people start talking about, but I feel like previous slides are, for some people, more important. So, gaps, for example, when you start to understand what you have and you understand what others have, suddenly we go into this sort of this sphere of doing meta collections and coordinating conservation instead of everybody doing their own thing. Hopefully that will have an impact. So there's much more to be done then when you realize that everybody can together pull in the right or the same direction. And then, of course, when we are here, so I'm not a botanist, so but these are numbers I took from somewhere else. but apparently 60% of temperate species are held in ex situ collections, 25% of tropical species are in held situ collections. I should have put my reference in here, but my basic understanding is a lot of these species need to be conserved in this area. It's quite hard to do that elsewhere, obviously. Well, I say that, but a lot of people might not see that. So you have a opportunity to do a lot of work here. So again, great data opens up for more opportunities in this space as well. So then I'm going to switch over to say, okay, what about all this data? How do I get real data? Or reliable data? So we, as I mentioned 5 years ago, we started this project, and we almost call it behavioral science, trying to find out what, for people to do work, it needs to be worthwhile. That goes for everything. If it's too much effort, we are all sort of creatures of sensible sort of processing. That if it's too much work, we will prioritize other things. So that's quite an obvious thing. So we're going to pick a few things that we have worked on with Hortis. So first of all, trying to we appreciate that most people actually want to be out in the garden working on the collections. You are not necessarily very excited when you're told that you're going to bring out your phone or take up your laptop to do work. It's the priority is to work on the collections. So how can we do that? Well, we need to design something that is accessible for any type of user, not just these sort of super specialists. The other thing we did when we talked to gardens was one of the bigger struggles came up all the time, plant names. Oh, that's so tricky. And there are about 400,000 wild species or 1.5 million published names out there. So, and I'm sort of keyboard dyslexic. I type wrong in there, I try not to. So very little empathy around that. So what we did early on with this is to integrate the taxonomy, the taxonomic opinion from Colin and his friends. The Plants World Online is fully integrated. So you get 1.4 million published names on your phone. That helps an tremendous amount on terms of spell checking. The other thing is that maps, if you are a bit spatial, like a lot of people, I love maps and seeing your collection from a spatial perspective. It just gives you a very new perspective on how you're managing collection. And these kind of tools have typically been very complicated. If anybody has tried to install some of those GIS or Geographic Information System platforms and try to learn it, it's non-trivial. So what we try to do is to take away all the complexity and what we call botanical GIS. So as simple as it can be for mapping, so you can get useful maps. Then other things like capturing photos and other things that people want. The last thing, which goes for probably, I don't have any numbers, but very few gardens who have their own IT department. And also, I suppose we read with COVID when we started to try to access our systems from elsewhere, all those challenges. So what we've done here with our platform is to, it's a cloud-based service. You don't even need to talk to your IT department if you have one. It's all included on the cloud. You can just take out your phone or whatever you prefer and start using it. And that takes a lot of friction away, and expense, because there's no additional cost of hiring servers or anything like that. So that was one of those top challenges that we noticed Botanic Gardens struggle with. So I'm just going to show a few examples of that. So here's an example of somebody recording. You might notice this species. It's the national plant or flower of the Dominican Republic. And you see here now that the person is typing, and he gets 1.4 million names on their phone, or in this case an iPad. And then you could just, the chance of spelling that correctly for me is like close to zero. just have said that. So the English is going through a very simple flow here. But the idea here is that it's very simple, but it can be very advanced if you want to record wild herds, details, and what have you. But the idea is to let, so we talk to users, and people ask about training, but we ask them to run the tutorials we have, which are just a few videos, and we have no people ask for training. As in, they just run the videos and then they understand it. And that's how we want it to be. So that's great. We love to talk to you, so we are available on Zoom calls, but so that's sort of, so here we see the flow again. And you also see here on the right, that we're pulling then metadata from Huntsville Online. So you get distribution and life form and other data. And suddenly your IUCN red listing, like was mentioned yesterday. So those things are so valuable. And why should everybody sit here and duplicate factual information? Doesn't make sense. So that's our philosophy. Any factual data that's out there, we try to incorporate gradually as we improve the product. So the next example I'm going to show you is from the map. So another big challenge that many institutions struggle with is what is known as the inventory gap. So that's the difference between what's in the garden and what's in your database. And that is because it's a lot of effort to keep on top of what's happening in the garden. So what we've introduced here is what we call sort of an observation flow. So instead of say being like traditional inventory, you take one bed at a time, most of our users are now doing what we call ad hoc inventory. So horticulturalists have their phone and they do stuff or they see stuff and they record observations. In this example, this oak, we just, I can't remember what the example did. You can write a long essay about the condition of the plant. And then we know that this plant has been inventoried. And we can run some stats. You can tell me that next time I want to see this every 6 months. So you basically have a dynamic way to prioritize how you track your collection instead of having this unease about, oh, we don't know if all of these plants are dead when you look at the list. You can actually do metrics on how far you are behind actually I don't show you the graph here about that, but then that sort of help you to be more strategic on how you track your collection. The other part that I don't show here is, of course, you can take photos straight there, and yeah. So, and the beautiful thing with cloud, a lot of people ask, what's the maximum records, or there are no limits on anything here. Size of photos, I think it's like 36 megapixels or something. So, but in general, the beautiful thing about being on the cloud as well is that the computational power is such that we can do a lot of things. The last thing I would mention there in that context is that because we're on the cloud and people save their data, we keep a copy of the original data and make a new copy every time you make changes. So your collection becomes a time machine. And then the system will actually know what your collection looked like at any given time and place, which is for future very, has great potential in terms of analytics. And I don't think anybody's done that yet, as far as I know. But that's again the beautiful aspect of modern technology that opens up these kind of opportunities. And in that context, the future is, technology is sort of moving fast. and we're constantly doing our research to try to understand, and that's why I'm here as well, to learn your challenges and see what we can do to improve this particular problem, which is getting everybody to have reliable data. So, I also thanked St. George Village Botanic Garden Association yesterday. That was great. And if you go to our website, they were profiled as the Garden of the Month in February. So you can go there and read their story. You heard it yesterday, but it's probably from a different angle in Monaco. So the way we see it, your plant collections are fantastic. I'm sure it is. And if you're getting reliable data, you have more potential to share with others and hopefully a brighter future. So, thank you very much.
Is there any questions? Yes, we have 2 hands up.
Okay, thank you for this impressive talk. I was wondering, why don't you use workflow online as taxonomic reference? I mean, that's supported by the global taxonomic scientific community and referenced according to their principal taxonomic sources.
That's a great question. So when we started, that decision was made yet, and we are planning to switch to workflow online later this year. Just to add one thing is that we treat the taxonomic backbone as an opinion, so users can make their own mind if they want to. But yes, that's definitely going that way. Yes, great. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for the talk. It was quite wonderful. So your plants in the world online, everything's in Latin, like the plants names are in Latin, but is there interface in different languages of
So the question was, is there Portuguese available in any other languages when it comes to the user interface? Not yet. We have designed Portis to become sort of multilingual from a user experience perspective. So it's all a question about funding and this, the community. And if all of you sign up, we will switch to have a Spanish one as quickly as we can. So we're definitely thinking about it, but it's just a resource intensive effort. But yes, definitely for the future, we are very likely to have a Spanish one and maybe a French, etc. Yeah, thank you. That's great.
Thank you so much. Can we give a round of applause?